Hello. So this is working. Bonjour à tous. Hi. So I'm very pleased today to be moderating this panel. It's I would almost say an exciting topic, but I don't know what's your relationship with reporting on sustainability and accountability. So we'll see about that, but let's try to keep it exciting at least. It's complex, it's evolving, so we'll definitely need to cover a lot today. A few maybe perspectives that we will bring today. So the words of standard development, a UN-led initiative, the academic sector, obviously, and also some on-the-ground practitioners. Thank you for joining from afar. With that, let's begin. So, Sonja, Shannon, our first question is pretty broad. What do you believe are key challenges in sustainability reporting?
Okay, hi everyone, pleasure to be here today. A bit about PCAF before I jump into sustainability report, the problems and challenges of sustainability reporting. So the PCAF, or the Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials, it's a bit of a mouthful, so we'll go with PCAF. It is an industry-led organization that was established in 2015 with the aim to harmonize and standardize greenhouse gas emissions across the financial sector. And so PCAF now provides standardized accounting methodologies across financed emissions, capital markets transactions, as well as insurance and reinsurance portfolios. As an organization, we also offer an emission factor database with economic emission factors, as well as technical assistance, an e-learning accreditation platform, service to our signatories, which has grown to nearly 700 worldwide. And so diving into it, one of the biggest challenges that we see in sustainability reporting is data. If you take scope 3 emissions, they're already sitting one step outside of your own value chain. And then as the financer, you're an additional step removed as you work through that investor-investee relationship. And so getting reliable emission factors or reported emissions data is quite tough. And then you add the complexity of large loan books, multiple calculation methods, and the growing regulatory scrutiny to not just disclose those numbers, but to show how you got them, the calculation methods, the data sources, and your assumptions. And that's really where PCAF comes to help financial institutions by giving that clear and consistent framework to tackle these challenges and to produce useful and credible disclosures.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm glad I went second. So data, for sure. That's, data availability, data reliability, and I'm happy to have heard this morning already, garbage in, garbage out. So it really, what are you collecting? What kind of data are you reporting? And what kind of data is available to you? And yesterday we also heard a small credit union who cannot measure, but they do it, right? So how do we capture those? And there are plenty of those. So small organizations in the social economy, small credit unions for the financial sector, really just cannot measure. They don't have the resources, so that's a challenge. But another challenge is the understanding of sustainability and what it is we measure. And we keep talking about environmental, social, sustainability and economic. And so what is socially sustainable or not sustainable? We're talking about the environment, so it's almost the easiest one these days to capture. But what is, how much inequality is sustainable? How many women not in the labor force is sustainable or other marginalized communities? So even understanding what are we talking about when we talk about sustainability, and to be sure that on the environment, it's not just reporting the environmental indicators, but sustainability indicators. Measured on what? What's the benchmark? And so this is mainly what I'll be addressing today, that, what are those benchmarks? What is the threshold? What is sustainable? So it's one thing to say, well, we are reducing carbon emissions. Is net zero sustainable? Well, we already know it's not. So we have to go under zero. Negative, and we're not even able to reach the zero, right? So we don't want to be depressing everybody. There's some hope, but nevertheless, those are the challenges, right? Even understanding what are we talking about. And then, of course, the backlash against ESG these days. If you just look at ESG is no more, really. yet we're all in it, in the thick of it, right? And it's no more because you have, the backlash politically that's penetrating pretty much, every economy now. You have also this unreliability of data, also the differentiate, like different measurements by different organizations, and it's our proprietary measures. So it's good to hear that somebody's asking you to disclose what it is you're measuring, but often it's proprietary ways of measure methods, right? And then you don't know how, Shell is sustainable on one measure and really not sustainable on another. And so those all are a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah, thank you both. Definitely many elements that are resonating with my daily life. Maybe Paul, you are on the ground. What would be the basically the advices that you can bring to us to start the journey? So how to gain buy-in, how to make progress on sustainability reporting?
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me. For me, I would think that it's important to remember that reporting is a tool. It's not an end of itself. You're using it to accomplish something. So then when you are thinking about generating buy-in, you would want to think about what it is that you are trying to accomplish. You want to speak to the needs of your members and of your management. And those will vary. In some cases, environmental sustainability can be a good just on its own. In other cases, you may be concerned about risk management or economic sustainability or economic development being part of the energy economy of the future. So I would take a look at your membership and your management, understand what's important to them, and then just think through how environmental measurement and management can speak to those values.
Thank you. And I definitely like the nuance that you are bringing between the end goal, which is not maybe reporting, but more the action that we need to put in place. Moving on, so to a broader perspective, maybe Elizabeth and Shannon, what are the trends that you are seeing in terms of reporting for financial institutions? And maybe a bonus questions for you, Elizabeth. How do the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, provide a mean for sustainability alignment?
Okay. Well, should we start with some trends? Go ahead. And just for any of you who are not familiar with the UN Global Compact, the UN Global Compact Network Canada is the Canadian arm of the world's largest sustainability initiative. So there are 200,000 companies worldwide who have signed on at the CEO level to the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact. And I'll talk about those a little bit more in a minute. But in terms of trends, we work actually very closely with an organization called Works Design in Toronto. They are one of our partners in a program we run for our network companies on an annual sustainability report peer review. And so some of the best practices we see are, and I feel your pain, Jérôme, we hear from our member companies in Canada all the time about the moving trends and frameworks. However, those who find it less painful, let's say, have treated reporting as an inflection in a management cycle, which is what it really should be. It should be that moment to measure, evaluate, recalibrate, and share out transparently. And so these are some of the things that we see. Obviously financial data has some very absolute measures, but where there is, we hear a lot from companies is what do we do with the things that are more qualitative? And having companies really report for themselves against their goals. We see scorecards as being a really important tool to say, like, this is where you intended to be, and this is where we've landed. It can be a A, B, C, D, E, F school kind of framework or otherwise. Certainly getting as much quotes and feedback by impacted communities really adds quite a lot of validity as well, along with, obviously, aligning with the frameworks that you must align with, picking good voluntary ones, and just being as transparent as possible. Of course, integrated financial reporting, really having that as part of your your ESG report alongside your financials are really important. And I would counter to my panelist here that ESG is not dead. Still alive and well, and still used quite frequently in Canadian companies, less so south of the border, of course. Yeah, I'll pass over to you, and we can come back to the SDGs.
Perfect. And so one of the big trends that we're seeing in sustainability reporting is the shift from voluntary to mandatory disclosures, which in PCAF's case is helping support relevance as we're being mentioned and referenced throughout these frameworks and regulations. But with that comes the shift for accuracy and assurance as financial institutions want audit-ready reports. And so to get there, what we're seeing is a rapid adoption of technology. So advanced reporting tools, analytical platforms, as well as sophisticated calculation methodologies to increase the quality of the data that you are reporting. And so kind of similar to what we're saying is we're seeing sustainability reporting shift from less of a compliance checkboxing exercise, more to a strategic capability that builds trust and shapes competitive advantage.
Thank you, boss. So we just heard about basically the need, the pressure we have to disclose more. So more data, more maybe commitments sometimes, or less, depending on where we are. But at least more information about how we are dealing and managing sustainability in our organizations. It's not easy, and raise a question about greenwashing. So it's a sensitive topic, obviously. But the question is here, how can financial cooperatives basically ensure that they are not greenwashing in very simple terms? And do we have an advantage? That's a good question here. So we'll start with Paul remotely, and then we will move to my side. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't know that greenwashing needs to be a sensitive topic. I think it's something that we should address forthrightly. And the simple solution to avoid, charges of greenwashing are just to not do it, to be serious about what we're measuring, serious about taking action to correct it. So I think that really living into your sustainability commitments, being public about them, and being transparent in your successes and your failures and your assessment methodology really would solve a lot of those problems.
I'll pick it up from there. So I think usually when greenwashing is happening or is being accused of happening, it comes from a lack of transparency and consistency. And so one of the easiest ways to combat that or to avoid it, again, with Paul's sentiment that we're not trying to greenwash here, or the intent for most of us is to not try to greenwash. And so from PCAF's perspective, one of the easiest ways to do that is to use a credible standard like the PCAF methodology. It's credible. You are able to trace methodology and data sources year over year, and that really builds transparency and trust to your reporting audience. I think the second is along those lines is not just to disclose the numbers, to disclose how you got there and to allow that traceability. And then the last thing I'll note is publish additional metrics such as a data quality score. And so for those less familiar, PCAF offers for each of our asset classes that we have a methodology for, we offer a data quality score, which ranges from 5 being the least accurate data that you have, so in most cases it's economic emission factors, to 1 being reported verified emissions data. And so when you're able to tie back to a metric that's not directly, it is directly linked to your emissions, but it's not an emission metric that you're reporting, it allows for narrative to show how even though your emissions may be changing in ways you don't want them to change year over year, you're improving your accuracy of the data. And as we all know as sustainability practitioners, when you're getting better data, those emissions might go up, they may also go down. And so being able to show a non-sustainability practitioner or someone external that there is progress happening and you're being able to, with greater accuracy, it's more decision useful, it also allows for better engagement and awareness within your portfolio. And so I'd say those 3 are really, they encompass some key steps to avoid greenwashing.
So yeah, maybe,
So greenwashing, it's one thing to be intentionally fooling the public. And it's another to measure and think you're doing the right thing. And that yet, GRI reporting has been around for 25 years. Are we seeing any progress on sustainability? Very minimal on very specific issues, but not nearly enough as, so reporting is increasing, progress is not matching up. And this is the challenge. So if anything, I think, in these conversations, in the credit union and cooperative system, where we are honest, we are about values, we are about all of those things that are good for economy, society, and the planet, hopefully, we need to be clear on the meaning of the indicators that we use. Are they really doing the job of impact and showing impact? Who are you reporting to? What is the purpose of reporting? So again, I'm not talking about intentional greenwashing, but accidental greenwashing, because the indicators are just not meant to be showing sustainability and progress, right? And so we have to find a way, and again, there are some tools out there we'll talk about today that can help in precisely doing that, measuring sustainability in an honest way, reporting it in an honest way. But I want to also point out that it's not just the green, it's the social washing, these days the war washing, and it's Financial Times that reports it as such. I didn't invent the word. And it's, so in the Financial Times, you will see the report that there's pressure on rating agencies and governments to include defense spending in ESG. So it is real, it's happening. And Global Alliance for Banking on Values and this sector stood up right away and said, no, we're not doing that. Under no circumstances is that okay or sustainable or aligned with our values. So these are the kinds of things that this sector can do. Stand up, say it loud and proud. That's not what we're going to be doing. So there's a lot behind all of these indicators and measures. And again, the key is who is the message for? Who are you reporting to? And that message, if it's reported to members, has to be very simple. You cannot be giving them, hundreds of pages of methodology. So it has to be really messaging, on point. And I think that's a challenge.
If I may, I'd love to speak particularly to our Canadian audience about where do they go right now with respect to greenwashing legislation. We have been really picking this apart over the last year and a half or so, working with legal experts, doing webinars, giving advice. And like all of you, we have a budget announcement that throws everything into question again. I think, though, that the advice the panel has already given is really in the spirit of what we're going to see come out in the fine details. And we know the devil's in the details here. We have also been concerned about the lack of transparency on what is an international standard and the level of the penalty that was set out by the Competitions Bureau. Now we have even less clarity, but from what we have understood as we've watched this carefully is this spirit of intention around you have a methodology, you have a way to measure it, you're sharing your progress, and you're sharing where you didn't live up to it. As you're trying to figure out where to go from here until that next set of clarity comes from the Competitions Bureau, all this advice really stands well.
Thank you. Definitely an interesting topic in the context of Canada. Maybe Sonja, I'm curious to hear your views and to dive a bit deeper on how to build trust in sustainability reporting, especially for non-financial data and in the case of storytelling in those reports. So maybe if you can add a few words and give an angle about credit unions. So how do we do as credit unions for those specific issues?
Well, I think we already touched on it, and that transparency. What are you reporting? What are you measuring? How are you doing it? All of that information should be really readily available. But I think, storytelling. Who are we telling the stories to? Who is our audience? We all say that we have great stories, and that's so true. But who is hearing the stories? Is it, again, preaching to the converted? Or are these stories getting out somehow? Like, who are we trying to reach with the stories, right? If we need to report to ourselves, that's one thing. But if we need to report it to a broader audience out there, in policy circles or whatever the case may be, then the messaging has to be, and those stories have to come out in whatever package you need them to come out. So you need to know the audience is the bottom line. But how to build trust in reporting, as I said, transparency, clarity, and I think really your marketing teams need to talk to the measurement and statistics teams. Key, clear, short messaging works, and for me, all-time favorite global alliance is how much are you invested in the real economy? The real economy, nobody talks about the real economy, and that's the differentiator. It's this key differentiator between this sector, this, the credit union in the financial industry, and a bank in the financial industry. Just by measuring how much you live in the real economy will differentiate you right away, and will talk about your, of course you're then impacting the community, because if you're in the real economy, in the neighborhood or the country or the region, absolutely you'll be making a difference in people's lives. So that's one. Another one is fair tax that consumer co-ops came out with when Starbucks was moving into town in England. And they said, and they were saying, well, this is a multinational corporation not paying fair taxes in the UK. Well, we are. So put fair tax on your coffee cup and walk around. So these kinds of messages, you measure, you can support it with evidence, but also just brief and clear messaging to your population, if that's where your members, if that's where you're trying to reach. But if it's for policymakers, then those stories have to be, catered appropriately, I think.
Excellent. Coming back to the topic of reporting, and we said earlier that it shouldn't be basically an exercise by itself. It should be included in the business activities. Here, the question is, how can we make a connection between reporting, a better reporting, a more transparent reporting, and the bottom line growth, and maybe more engaged employees, more engaged members as well. So maybe Paul and Shannon, if you want to jump in on those.
Paul, do you want to go for it? Okay, I'll go for it. So PCAF hasn't actually published or done any research on this topic specifically, but I think we can strongly assume that transparency builds trust. And for financial cooperatives such as yourselves, trust is everything with your community, your members, stakeholders, and regulators. So clear, credible reporting signals accountability and commitment, which can reduce reputational risk as well as support long-term resilience. And when staff see that sustainability efforts are real and are measured, this can drive engagement internally. And so while I think the direct link to growth may vary, that transparency creates the foundation for confidence as well as stronger relationships, which is so crucial for success.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, it's a good question. Often when sustainability work is presented, this is sort of assumed, right? It's like everything's going to be better. Your employees are going to be more productive. Your customers are going to be happier. Your productivity is going to be higher. And I don't know that that's always the case. But in our case, it actually turns out that there was at least a correlation, if not a direct connection. We've had very strong financial performance. We have long-running measurement of how our members feel about the work that we're doing, how our coworkers feel about the work that we're doing, and those have all been very positive. And of course, we do lots of things, not just environmental sustainability, so I don't know that we can attribute it solely to that. But certainly we're getting positive feedback from members and from staff. Now, in our case, environmental sustainability really does speak to our core business strategy and to the interests of our members. If we had a different membership, that might not be the case. But I think in any case, just demonstrating those commitments is something that everybody's going to like. If you just show that you mean what you say and you are serious about doing it, I think anybody would respond well to that. So I do think that just by taking a firm commitment and really meaning it, certainly you'll get positive feedback from members and staff.
Can I point the audience to a piece of research that
sure.
might support them? I used to wear a hat at Volunteer Canada as the Director of Corporate Citizenship, and we did some research just before COVID with Great Place to Work. A number of your organizations probably work with them to do an employee pulse survey and see where you rate against other similar organizations. And what we found looking at some of the data that they had on employee engagement was an amazing correlation between employees who said, I am proud in the work our organization does in the community, and things like employee engagement scores and innovation even in the companies. And so it's a great short piece of research on Volunteer Canada's website. But what we found was that the companies that performed highest in the highest quartile were where the employees had decision-making ability on some of the commitments of the company and direct involvement and engagement. And knowing credit unions and financial cooperatives, that's part of the lifeblood of your organization, that your employees are involved in things like community investment and ERGs and making decisions. But this is some real data to back that up for you about giving employees some decision-making ability.
Thank you for the additional comments. So those are all great insights, basically, that we are discovering and sharing now. Something that I'm listening, at least internally and quite often externally as well, when discussing with other institutions, is how do we make sure that people know what we are saying today and more? So basically, when we speak about PCAF, not many people are just used to listen, to hear this acronym, so, and even less measuring finance emissions, about all the other reporting frameworks and disclosure requirements. So the question is here, how do we make sure that people are growing in terms of capacity and of knowledge? And my question would be probably more for Elizabeth and Sonja. What educational resources do you make available to help basically organizations have a better reporting? And it could be about certification programs, could be about trainings, any other tools that you bring to the market, to the organizations. Elizabeth.
Thanks very much. And I'm not sure if there's a slide associated with this, maybe, hoping. That's not the one. That's not it. Is there another one? It might come up later. Not only for our 220 and counting network members, but also for companies across Canada from a variety of sectors. We are following, as I mentioned, regulations and standards changes. We have a number of webinars. We have a webinar coming up on November 20th that is free for any of you to attend on the Canadian Sustainability Standards Board and the ISSB, and how that might be translated into Canadian standards. We also will be putting out in 2026 an on-demand training program on greenwashing, ready to launch originally in December, now waiting for a little additional clarity, but it actually looks at international standards because Canada's standards on greenwashing is actually closely aligned with other countries in the world. We are also looking to do a very similar on-demand piece of education for companies on the Modern Slavery Act, which again also has its foundations in a lot of international standards. So it will really kind of take things at a high level, put these two different regulations and connect them to UN standards, show you how they are common across the globe, which is helpful for organizations that have business in other jurisdictions, and then allow employees for whom, this may not be, they may not be on your sustainability team, they need some plain language, but may be responsible, for example, in procurement, to be able to access that. So that's some of the many tools we have, and we'll encourage you to take a look at unglobalcompact.ca.
Thank you. Sonja?
Yes, so that slide that was up there would now be relevant. Thank you so much for putting it up. Yeah, so I want to speak to this project and tool, and it's about the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development project on RISD. We call it SDPI, as every good acronym would, would go. So Sustainable Development Performance Indicators. And you can either get the code there or just go to SDPI on RISD, UNRISD. So what this was is recognizing that sustainability methodology is not good enough based on the GRI progress. The Global Reporting Initiative, as I said, started in 2020, and it recognized, but didn't do it, that they should use benchmarks and thresholds to show sustainability. So you need to know what would be sustainable to measure yourself against that, and what would be sustainable for your organization down to the micro level. So they recognized it, it's in GRI, but again, they never politically could cross that bridge. So what UNRISD has done with this project is they started from the UN family, UNCTAD, so UN Conference on Trade and Development, who developed 30 base indicators, reducing down SDGs and so many targets and so many indicators, reducing to 30 core. So UNCTAD has 30 core indicators and publications on the methodology that accompany that, and it's referenced in this. The picture you see from UNRISD is referencing UNCTAD's base 30. So we started from that, so it's limited to that, path dependence. And we started from those, and those are just incremental indicators, like majority of what we are, what we are not disagreeing with, but, highlighting and putting a spotlight on. And so the project was to, and it was involving a Center for Sustainable Organizations, the sustainability accountant, who was really key to this project, R3.0, another agency that's looking at sustainability accounting, and it involved social economy academic experts, I was the cooperative side, and Margie Mendel was the social economy side. And so we had a team. We wanted to, A, make sure that these are really sustainability measurement, and B, that cooperative, credit union, social economy voices are included in the measures, because that's the missing piece in pretty much every, or no, I shouldn't say every international effort, but in many, right? And so that's what this is about. And so we've worked through COVID, online hours of Zoom and all that, to end up with this tool, which is 60 indicators now. And it is using thresholds and allocations. And I'll just quickly say it's really benchmarking how much water can you use as an organization in your watershed. And then, are you sustainable? How many, whatever, tons of greenhouse gases are you emitting, and what is sustainable? The sustainability benchmark on that one is at most 0. Meaning you can go negative or be 0, right? That's the benchmark, but recognizing that we cannot jump there. So to not get everybody depressed how unsustainable they are, we do have the interim options, right? So interim options getting you to that point, but the benchmark really is at most 0 for that. For water, it depends on the watershed, it depends on the year, on whatever, season and so on. And so that's that. But where we have social economy, cooperatives, credit unions involved is on what's sustainable from the social perspective. And there you have your living wage employer, which is, again, one line, Van City, thank you. It's a living wage employer. So do you pay living wage or don't you? And living wage is not the minimum wage. Again, on gender parity, we are correcting those indicators. CEO so highest to lowest pay in the organization. And that's something to take a look at, report on, and be proud, usually. If you're not proud, think why you're not, right? But measures, and now on that one, I'll just quickly say that, this is a bit problematic because the inequality is much higher, but in credit unions and cooperatives, you can show real progress. Anyway, long story short, this tool is available. It is, there's a platform online, there's a manual, and R3.0 is doing trainings as well. And if anybody wants to know more, I'll be happy to talk to you.
Thank you again. And always interesting, even after quite a few years working on these topics like climate and reporting, to discover new tools, new training platforms, and acronyms. So, coming back to you, Paul, how can credit unions feel confident in their reporting? And I'd be especially curious to hear from you, because you are on the ground, you are from the inside of a credit union. So what would be your advice for other credit unions starting their journey or already in it?
Yeah, this is something that I have thought a lot about. And prior to my work at the credit union, I had a previous career doing environmental research and working with large and oftentimes messy data sets and trying to make meaning out of those. And I took a few things away that I think really speak to this question. And the first of those is that an imperfect method consistently applied is going to be better than trying to chase every edge case around. So if you just come up with sort of a simple methodology that you understand and is repeatable, and you can apply over time and follow trends, that is going to do you the most good. The second thing that I took away was the idea again of transparency, and I've been heartened to hear Sonja and Shannon talk about this as well. At least in my experience in the academic world, you're always expected to show your methods. When you present a result, you describe how you got there. And when I started doing credit union sustainability work, I found that often that wasn't the case. I was trying to learn how to do this, so I was reading sustainability reports, and they were totally black boxed. I had no idea how that work had been done. So I think that continuing to push for transparency in this industry is really going to benefit everybody. It gets everything out there. You can feel confident that you've got nothing to hide. People can see how the sausage is getting made. You can see how your peers are doing things and where you can improve, or if your methods are consistent, or if you can compare your results to theirs. And I would really push for that. So between the two of those, just a nice, simple method that's understandable and consistent, and then being really open about how you got your results, I think you can have a lot of confidence in what you're presenting.
I definitely like what I'm hearing here. And maybe to add one or two things from my perspective here. Bringing additional views, so you're not alone in your organizations to report, like the finance teams are already reporting. They have already systems, internal controls, things that usually people in the ESG, sustainable development world, don't know anything about quite often. So we need to bring together different views together here, and don't feel shy reaching out to the finance, to the internal audit teams, to the compliance, even legal sometimes. They have useful views. And so collaborative work inside our organizations is definitely something that we have seen helping improving the reporting world. We are getting close to the end of our panel, so maybe two last questions before jumping to the audience. Shannon, Elizabeth, so each of your organizations, so PCAF and Global Compact, are basically working and preparing to launch some exciting things. So I'd like to hear more about maybe Elizabeth to start with.
I think I mostly answered that question in the last one, but yeah. But I mean I could use the opportunity, because I did promise the audience I'd come back to the SDGs, just to say that you know, of course a number of you have adopted the SDGs as the framework, or one of the many frameworks through which you report, and I think that continues to have some resonance. It is really important. I will also say that, you know, we get a lot of questions about, hey, we're coming up on 2030. What's becoming of the SDGs? What's the next framework? Of course, you know that this is the second global framework. Prior to that, it was the Millennium Development Goals. I am sorry to tell you that I do not have insight on what happens next, whether we will all still be using the tiles, whether we will be using the pinwheel. But what I can tell you for business is that the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact actually transcend the SDGs. They were created 25 years ago, and the first 9 have held fast all the way through. They're around 4 pillars on human rights, on labor, on environment, and anti-corruption, and it was actually the anti-corruption one that was just added in 2012. What's interesting as you continue to assess your frameworks and your alphabet soup of ways to align or report is that we are aware of a number of ratings agencies who use the 10 principles, whether or not a company is part of the Global Compact, as the way, as recognizing this as an evergreen set of principles. They include things like support and respect and protection of human rights, not complicit in human rights abuses, freedom of association, elimination of compulsory forced or child labor, elimination of discrimination, a precautionary approach to environment, undertaking initiatives for environmental responsibility, diffusion of friendly tech, and of course the anti-corruption, a lot of things you're already doing. But whether it's S&P or Sustainalytics or Bloomberg's, they are using these as frameworks because of their evergreen nature. So I don't want you to despair that we don't know what the future of our beautiful rainbow set of ways of looking at really what is the world's to-do list. There will be another iteration of global sustainable goals we can all work on together. But for businesses, you can hold fast to those 10 principles as something that will carry us through and transcend frameworks.
Thank you for this view. Shannon?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned at the top, the Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials, PCAF, we've developed a set of standards that can allow a financial institution to account for its greenhouse gas emissions across its loans and investment portfolios, as well as insurance and capital markets transactions. And so our standards are built into 3 parts. Part A covers financed emissions. Part B, capital market transactions, which is facilitated emissions. And then Part C, which is our insurance associated emissions. And so with that being said, kind of the PCAF standard is for financial institutions by financial institutions. And so our expansion, our development is all led by the signatory base and the market. And so over the past 2 years, we've had nearly or over around 150 PCAF signatories who have been pen to paper drafting new methodologies to add to our suite of standards. And so those are expected to launch by the end of the year. And so I cannot say a date publicly, but you know where we are in the year in the calendar now. Those are expected quite soon. So we're going to be launching an update that falls into 3 buckets. And so the first is for our Part A, our financed emissions standard. We're going to be introducing 4 new methods. So that's on use of proceed structures. So for any areas that funds that are going to a project or asset that is earmarked and not just for general purposes. Then we have securitization and structured products, sub-sovereign debt, as well as an optional reporting of undrawn loans in accordance to IFRS S1 and S2. In addition, we are also going to be publishing 2 new reporting recommendations. So these are optional recommendations for financial institutions to use. And these came out of a discussion paper that went out for consultation last year on inventory fluctuations. So the first one is a fluctuation analysis. And so that is an exercise a financial institution can do and disclose to show the drivers of changing financed emissions year over years that may not be captured in just the general narrative that we have right now. We're also going to be publishing an inflation adjustment factor, which can allow for an alignment of emissions data reporting year as well as financial data reporting year. So that is Part A, what's coming in Part A. We also have a supplemental guidance that's coming to support Part A. This will be an optional guidance called Financed Avoided Emissions and Forward-Looking Metrics. And so this is going to help financial institutions capture any future climate impacts that they are financing in right now. And so that is an optional supplemental guidance if a financial institution wants to capture that impact and report it. And then finally, we have our insurance-associated emissions standard, where we're going to be introducing 2 new methods on project insurance and treaty reinsurance. And so there's been a huge collaborative effort from our signatories, some of them who are in the room, but global signatories who have really put so much effort to help us bridge the gap of coverage that our standards have right now and where we're going in the future. And so those are expected soon, and those will be all over our social media, our LinkedIn pages, and we'll be having some webinars to go over the launch as well. So that's expected soon.
Thank you, Shannon. And I know some of the people I'm working with will be really excited by some of those. So last question, not the easiest one, but it will be interesting to have a very quick view from each of you about how can 2026 be the year of greater accountability in reporting, and a very quick why. Maybe Paul, remotely.
Sure, thank you. In a couple of ways. One is just we're always trying to get better at this, right? We do it every year, and hopefully we just improve our method, our speed and accuracy. In 26 in particular, though, we're going to face a couple of real accountability challenges. And speaking back to what I heard this panel say about the need to report on your successes and your failures, we found that after several years of declines, our corporate greenhouse gas emissions went up, right? And we need to get to the bottom of that and report on it. And also, we have been offsetting our corporate emissions through purchased offsets the way many people do. And for a while, we were able to generate local offset projects with an affordable housing project that everybody felt good about. And as time has gone on, we've gotten pushed further and further out into the market. And I think we'll need to be needing to have a frank discussion about our use of offsets and what we want to do with those going forward.
Thank you, Paul. Shannon?
I think I've used this word so many times throughout this panel, but transparency and accountability. Report what you're doing, continue to finance emissions and greenhouse gas emissions accounting is a journey. So just continue on the journey. There's a lot of noise that's happening out externally towards this space. And so I think just continuing on that journey, trying to improve your data sources and your engagement with borrowing clients to get to a greater accuracy.
Excellent. Sonja?
Yeah, I'll get us to 2025 being the International Year of Cooperatives. So we're just closing that. The ICA, International Co-op Alliance, just closed the year in Doha at the UN Social Development Summit. And I'm hopeful, well, a body of called CM50, the 50 CEOs of largest cooperatives and credit unions globally was formed to push the different kinds of agendas forward. And I hope that we will see some action also on this file, because I think collaboration, cooperation among all co-ops and credit unions, not just in, of course, within the industry, because you all share the same the same issues and regulatory frameworks and whatnot, but also going across and supporting the whole system to do the right thing.
Excellent. Elizabeth?
I'll join my comment to the one that I mentioned about really reporting being part of a good sustainability management cycle. And I think for 2026, companies of all stripes, but particularly for organizations like credit unions and financial cooperatives, to first start with raising your ambitions to where you can, really meeting the moment where we see the urgency, where we've heard from our colleagues, whether they're in Belém or in this room, where change needs to happen and you have the ability to access that. Then change your reporting to match, be accountable, be transparent, but also find a creative way to really bring this down to the granularity of your members and your employees, because your 150-page report is really important for that transparency and accountability, but they really need it boiled down to areas where they can see where they have opportunity to participate and have impact, and where they can also see what that means in their communities.
Thank you. And thank you all. We have a few minutes left, so maybe if you have a few questions in the room or online, feel free to ask them.
And this question is directed at Paul. It says, as a Montana native myself, I'm curious how Clearwater is approaching sustainability amid the rapid influx of out-of-state residents. How are you balancing environmental stewardship with the rising pressure of housing, resources, and community affordability?
Great question, and I appreciate it, and one that is close to my heart as well. And I personally subscribe to the housing theory of everything at this point. Housing is probably the core issue around sustainability broadly. Social sustainability, the stability of existing communities, economic sustainability, people's ability to live a full life, to build their future here, and environmental sustainability very much so, as those rising prices are fueling displacement, pushing people further away from jobs, increasing commutes, and things like that. So it's a big challenge for sure. And financing, credit unions play a role in that, but not the only role. There's also, we need politics, we need policy, we need a lot of things. But what are we doing about it where we can? Certainly providing financing is the core of what credit unions do. So we have all kinds of products and services designed to help people build their financial future, build towards home ownership. A challenge now because the cost of home ownership is so high, right? And there's not as much that we can do about the price of housing, but we are trying to help people build a strong financial foundation to get into that. We are also working to improve the energy performance of homes across Montana. We've recently launched a program that is going to help guide people through retrofit of existing homes, which can take homes, make them more affordable, make them healthier, and make them just sort of more comfortable as well. So trying to support the existing housing stock as best we can. So it's a big challenge. It's one we are certainly engaged with. We're engaged with a lot of community partners. We're all trying to work towards solutions, and it's we're doing what we can. It's a big fight.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions?
Thank you for the great panel and conversation, very timely, very relevant. Adam Schwartz from Delphi Consulting. I wanted to circle back to the piece you alluded to with the new federal budget. When C-59, the anti-greenwashing provision, passed a couple of years ago, we saw a massive pullback in high-carbon industries. Entire websites were scrubbed of reports, even companies shuttering entire sustainability teams to not pursue any of that work again. Obviously, we've seen in the new federal budget that has been pulled back. The burden of proof has been erased, and some other potential reviews around that policy. The debate around what is the right approach is still raging on, because when you have entire industries not talking about sustainability, it's problematic for progress and impact. So my question is, can you opine on what you think the right approach, the right policy approach is to support accountability when it comes to greenwashing? Because there seems to be a diverse opinion on where that should land. Thank you.
Who wants to jump in? Elizabeth?
Okay. Thanks very much for raising that. And I would actually characterize the way companies initially approached the news of the new act, the new law, as not like, I don't think we've seen entire industries. I think we've seen we saw a quick, disturbing amount of pull down from several oil and gas companies, particularly in the Pathways Alliance, where we saw other ones keep their information alive. We saw over the course of 2024, a lot of companies pause. Listen, we need our legal experts to read this over before we're going to put it out. And then ultimately they did. I think the penalties have been so extreme and punitive in the way they were originally articulated that it did create unintended consequence of companies going, we're gonna lower expectations of us, and we're going to be a little bit quieter. We'll put out a few less statistics. So I would not, and somebody just said government. I'm definitely not government. We're the nonprofit organization that's associated with the multilateral institution of the UN. We wish for that clarity on standards. We think it was probably within the ability of the Competitions Bureau to name specific international standards, but they refused to do so beyond the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And I think, and this is just personal opinion, I'm a bit conflicted about the inability now of individuals or others to bring concerns to the Competitions Bureau. I think that was a good diplomatic path, but again, I think there needed to be some vetting, much in the same way, if any of you are familiar with the CORE initiative. So this is on, it's a government ombuds group that looks at responsible enterprise in developing countries, mostly mining, metals, textiles. And there's a bit of a 4-part kind of vetting process before you take it to like the ultimate sort of punitive place to be. So I'm not giving you my direct, this is what I tell the Competitions Bureau to do, but that clarity on standards, I think is within their ability, and I look forward to it.
Thank you. Any other perspective? None? I think we're...
Question. I'm invoking MC privilege. Can I have the mic up here? Thanks. That's a really good topic. I can tell there's a lot of juice there, but we hit it right at the end of our time. And I have one that I'd really like to get out into the room. Because we have at UIS, in the network and at the summit, we have people with a lot of ranges of where they are in their sustainability journey. Particularly, I think, for people who are early in the journey, even people who are along a little way, sometimes they start to hear about frameworks and the things that you all are expert in and get anxiety about what it means. I can speak to this from personal experience. UNFCU has been in UN Global Compact for quite a while. We joined PCAF 2 years ago, and that was a major decision point because PCAF seemed like a level up for us, and we believe absolutely in our commitment to PCAF because of the transparency and everything that you've been talking about, what the framework stands for. But I'm wondering if you can maybe speak to the people who have some of that anxiety about whether to get into these sort of reporting frameworks, about what resources are available to them to help sort of take what might feel like a burden on that is otherwise optional to them if they just choose not to join UNGC or PCAF.
Sure. So from PCAF's perspective, we have the suite of the standards, which are those calculation methodologies, and those are free for any financial institution, even non-financial institution, if they wish to transfer it to their situation, to use to calculate their emissions. And so there's no commitment necessary to use the standards. If you do choose to commit to PCAF, you are given access to us as the Secretariat, technical assistance, the emission factor database. But one of the, I think, best things that PCAF offers when joining is you also get the exposure to the network of other financial institutions who have joined. So we host regional working groups, we have a Canada-specific working group, and working groups for various asset classes to deep dive into those challenges. And so within those groups, you have financial institutions from all steps of the journey. And so having the network to support those challenges in a non-competitive way is a really beneficial thing and is something that our signatories come back to us with just the highest of praise for. And so with joining PCAF, we also have there is no requirement that you must disclose day one, hit the ground running. You have a 3-year period where you are able to disclose anything. We look for some sort of progress to disclose. And if there are kind of loopholes or challenges that you're encountering, we want to support you in that. And so it's a report or justify why you cannot. And we are true believers that this is a journey. And so I would say the anxiety is fair, the anxiety is real, but we do offer as PCAF a lot of support for financial institutions who do choose to join us as to how to get that first step, and be it even if you're just looking at emission factors and not touching your portfolio in terms of reported data, it's a start on the journey.
Thanks for the opportunity. At 220 member organizations, we are the second largest sustainability membership in Canada, second only to B Corp or B Lab. Is there anyone in here whose organization is a B Corp? Right. So the rigor of the auditing you've arrived when it comes to being able to have a standard that is rigorous, that is audited. If you become a member of the UN Global Compact Network, we have an annual sustainability reporting mechanism, the communication on progress. We are the organization that celebrates progress. We are the big tent that takes companies wherever they are, nascent or mature, on their sustainability journey. And much like PCAF, most of the resources that we provide, whether we're doing webinars or accelerators, we have online opportunities, or like the event we led yesterday at Norton Rose Fulbright on a business and human rights workshop, are all around how to help your companies make progress on those 10 principles. Doing it in a peer way, doing it in a supportive way, and even helping companies where they step back. We actually don't like perfect stories. We don't feel like between ourselves we learn from perfect stories. So yes, there is a reporting mechanism. It's a little bit lighter. than some of the other voluntary ones, and there's support for it, and we're here for the progress.
Great, thank you so much. I know that sort of brings the people who maybe are hearing some of the more advanced talk sort of up to speed, and it's kind of like a warm hug, right? Having been through both processes, I can tell you getting started is worth it, wherever you are, whatever that anxiety is. Your anxiety is understandable and it is real, but getting started is worth it. Continuous progress is the name of the game. Let's have a round of applause for this fantastic panel.